Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Greece once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. These guys are a very well respected brewery these days, and if people were to ask me about them, I would say that they are just very solid all round, and they're potentially the best known of the Greek craft breweries these days. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from this brewery before, one that I know they can do very well, but I think this one in comparison to the others that I've had is a little bit more kind of straightforward and a little bit more old school. So I'm quite interested to see what that perspective is going to be like from this particular brewery. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head to Greece. These guys are based between Corfu, the set of islands, and also Thessaloniki in the eastern part of the country, so can't really say a hometown for this brewery, but we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Seven Island Brewery. This particular beer is called Deisidaimonia, if I've pronounced that correctly, probably not, but it comes in at 12.1% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout aged in rum and bourbon barrels. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. I've heard very good things about these kind of more old school barrel-aged Imperial Stouts from Seven Islands, but the Imperial Stouts that I've had from this brewery thus far have been pastry stouts, which have been good as well, although the pastry stout is not my kind of favourite sub-style when it comes to Imperial Stouts, in all honesty. But definitely nice to return to these guys. This is another beer that I picked up at Angry Beer in Mongkok in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, and it seems that Seven Islands are starting to get their beer out here to Asia, which is pretty cool, I have to say, because I encountered these guys back in like 2017 or something when they were just starting out, the Citra Blast and stuff like that. So it's really cool to return to these guys and see how far they've come, because they do some very good stuff. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. The Deisidaimonia, 12.1% rum and bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout blend from Seven Island Brewery, a gypsy brewery based in Greece. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Seven Island Brewery as well, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I review beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Greek playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the Seven Island Brewery once again, and I will apologise in advance for any bad Greek pronunciations, because it's a language that I'm not really that familiar with, of course. But yeah, as I mentioned to you already, Seven Island Brewery are a Greek gypsy brewery, I guess we can call them, and the company was founded back in 2013 by Lefteris Mezimeris, known as Lefty, and Konstantin Pougatsias, who is known as Kostas. But Kostas grew up in the Thessaloniki area, and he loves barbecue, sci-fi and heavy metal, and apparently he started a craft beer import business in 2012, but a few years later in 2014 he met Lefty, and that's where the whole brewery business basically kicked off. But Lefty started homebrewing in late 2009, and he says that he just loves creating his own beers from scratch and that he's addicted to craft beer. And you'll find that with the Greeks. They are, you know, very passionate people. They love, when they find something that they love, they absolutely love just playing with that. But apparently his favourite styles are Imperial Stouts and double IPAs, and he loves the fruited sour beers as well. But after a number of years of homebrewing, he studied at the Institute of Brewing and Distilling in 2015 2015, and of course the year prior he had bumped into Costas, and that's where Seven Islands Brewery was born. But during the first years of operations, this brewery won the best new brewery in the world and also the best brewery from Greece from Rate Beer. That was in 2017, and the Citra Blast, which was one of their very early beers, a very good 7% or so Citra West Coast IPA. This entered the best 100 beers in the world, and for a long time this was also rated as the best beer from Greece as well. But over the course of 2017 they were Gypsy Brewing, but then for a short period of time from 2018 they had their own brewery in Corfu, which is of course just off the west coast of Greece, a set of islands there, and they've got a barrel aging program which is very well respected, and they've been producing a lot of Imperial Stouts over the years. But there have been a number of collaboration brews because of the fact that this brewery is a Gypsy brewery, and the name Seven Island is taken from the fact that these guys are, you know, Corfu is part of the Seven Ionian Islands, which are distinct for being Venetian rather than having been under Ottoman rule, and they developed their own distinctive culture, and as a result, and they've got more Italian influence, I guess you could say. But in recent years this brewery have really been focusing on Gypsy brewing. They've been brewing a number of beers at Frau Gruber in Augsburg in Bavaria in Germany, and this particular beer was produced at Sori Brewing, which is right next to the airport in Tallinn in Estonia. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure where most of their beers are produced, but as of August 2024, these guys have produced around 100 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Seven Island Brewery for the moment. Over the last few years, these guys have been building a very, very good reputation for themselves. So yeah, when I went to visit Greece and visit my friend there, it was quite cool to come across these guys and try their beers in the very early stage. But yeah, they've gone from strength to strength, and they're probably the most recognisable Greek craft beer brand these days. So if you get the chance to try some of their beers, try them out, because you certainly will not be disappointed based on my previous experiences. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Seven Island Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages if you want to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have produced. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at this beer itself. So like I said to you, the name of this one is Deisidaimonia. It comes in at 12.1% EBV, and this one is a blend of Imperial Stouts that have been aged in bourbon barrels and rum barrels, and then of course the blend has been created after that. But yeah, this one was produced at Sori Brewing in Tallinn in Estonia, who are very well known for their barrel program, of course, so they probably got a very good selection of barrels there. But yeah, this was one, I think this cost me not that much. It was like 120 Hong Kong dollars, so about, yeah, £12 sterling, maybe 13 or 14 euros, $14 American, something like that. But for what it is, and you know, considering the fact that it is an import here to Hong Kong, I thought that was a pretty reasonable price. But the name Deisidaimonia, I had to look that up. Apparently it means that you are kind of scrupulous in religious matters. So yeah, I really had no idea what this word meant previously, but yeah, kind of an interesting name. So maybe beer is Left Heresy's religion, which would make sense. But there you can see the Seven Island Brewery symbol on the side. You've got this lovely kind of green wax top on the beer, 330 milliliter this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about, because I'm really, really curious about this one. That came off very easily actually. So yeah, let's get it out into the glass and see how we go. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening there as we open up the beer. But yeah, I've heard this beer is really very, very good, and if it's produced at Sori Brewing as well, that makes it even better, because you know, Terry I know is a very, very good brewer, but the guys at Sori, when it comes to barrels, they really are one of the best in Europe at this. So yeah, there you go. So let's just get that in place so that my OCD is happy, and there we go. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head. That is already fading away in the middle of the glass to just be a very, very thin foamy layer, but you can see some smaller bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there, and it just kind of, yeah, it just kind of becomes a little bit more fluffy the further up the head that you go. But all in all, it does look pretty nice, this beer, and pretty much what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts or Imperial Porters, it's very, very difficult to actually influence the colour of the beer in that particular way. I've only seen it done once with beets, and that was Puhasta Brewery in Estonia, of course. This beer is brewed in Estonia, which is kind of funny. But yeah, this one is pretty much what you would expect for an Imperial Stout. If we shine the light through it, it doesn't even have that much clarity to it, so probably there's a good little bit of oat and wheat in this beer as well, which means that we're in store for quite a thick mouthfeel out of this, but not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. You can see a few little bubbles rushing up toward the bottom of the head there, but in all, this is pretty much what you would expect from the Imperial Stout category appearance wise. So yeah, a few things about the Imperial Stout. There are a couple of ways you can play with this style. So you can do a double mash, which is going to give you a big sort of thick, sticky mouthfeel, if you like. You can do barrel aging, which is where you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel, but you're going to get more kind of infused flavours. You can do longer wort boils, which are going to give you a more kind of leathery, but more complex sort of brown sugary flavour out of the beer. And yeah, you know, you can do blending and things like that as well. But yeah, I'm curious just to see how this one turns out. But there are a few ways that you can play with this style, of course. You can add adjuncts into it, of course. That's the other one that didn't quite come to mind. So adjuncts can also be an interesting way to play with Imperial Stouts. But yeah, we'll just need to see and try and interpret what's going on in this one. That's always one of the interesting things when it comes to trying different examples of this style of beer. But we said everything we need to about the technicalities of the style and the appearance of this particular beer. Let's have a look at the aroma and just see what this beer is going to have in store for us. That smells absolutely beautiful. This is going to be an absolute monster, this beer. We can safely say that. Yeah. Aroma-wise, this beer just is ridiculously good. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. First impression of this one, you can obviously smell the barrel influence coming out of this beer, but it's like a proper old school barrel aged Imperial Stout. It's got the lovely kind of smooth dryness to it. It's got the big brown sugars, the chocolate, the fruit, everything. Yeah, I think I'm going to really, really enjoy this one. But I've heard that Seven Islands are very, very good when it comes to these more old school Imperial Stouts, and that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to try this one for you. But yeah, this has got a lovely kind of dry, smooth sweetness to it, fruitiness, everything you want from the style. So let's take a little bit of time and just analyse the aroma a little bit more before we taste the beer. But I can tell you straight away, this beer is going to be pretty damn good actually. So yeah, let's break this down. The backbone of the beer, you can smell that lovely roasty toasty well-fired bread crust coming out of it, and it smells great. On top of that, you've got, or underneath that, you can smell the oaky character of the barrel. So the backbone of this beer is a mix of the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust and the actual barrel side of things. So as I've explained on the channel many times before, European oak and American oak are quite different. You've got bourbon barrels and rum barrels in here, which will be a mixture. European oak is a little bit drier, but still shows you that kind of vanilla note, whereas American oak is a lot smoother and almost gives you a bit more sweetness. So with this beer, you've got a mix of dry oak and smooth oak in there. You've got a wee bit of kind of nuttiness to the wood as well, but quite a little bit of vanilla. But you can really smell that mix of brown sugar from the bourbon, which is a little bit more toasty, I would say, and the rum, which is a little bit sweeter and a little bit more oily in a sense. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, the barrel note in this beer is obviously quite prominent in the aroma, but you've got so much going on in this one. So above the barrel, you start to get the actual malty side of the beer, if you like. So for me, like I said earlier on, you've got a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. There's certainly a bit of that kind of sweet, oily, kind of rye bready character, some wholemeal brown bread in there. You've got wee bits of nuttiness coming out of the beer in that regard as well. There's a mix of like chocolate brownie and chocolate sponge in this one, and they're showing you that sort of kind of silky aroma. I did see on Untappd that apparently the last time this beer was released was 2022, so it could be, I certainly couldn't see it on the bottle, it could be that this beer was produced back then. So it says the best before date is the 5th of the 10th, 2026. So yeah, maybe this is going back as far as 2021, because usually 5 years is what they put on the labels of these. They usually recommend about 5 years for these big Imperial stouts as the best before date. But yeah, the beer within that sort of brownie and cakey sort of note, this beer is showing a little bit of that silkiness, which is typical of a beer that's been in the bottle for a wee while. So yeah, on top of the kind of cakey and brownie type notes, you've got that lovely kind of smooth chocolatey note coming out of the beer. So you've got a little bit of that more kind of, you know, 80-90% cocoa chocolate at the back of the nose, but then you've got a wee bit more of a kind of milky chocolate coming out of the beer as well, maybe 40% cocoa, but lots and lots of brown sugars in this one. From the aroma, I think this one is very likely double mash, but I don't think longer wort boil, to be honest with you. You do get a little bit of toasty brown sugar out of the beer. You have got some of those leathery notes there, and usually those leathery notes are an indicator of a longer wort boil, but it's not too dry and too complex in that sense. But above that, you've got some really nice kind of like treacle molasses type brown sugars out of this beer. So there's a wee bit of treacle and molasses in there, straight up caramel, and you've also got that nice little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this one, I think is really nice. It does get more and more sweet and more brown sugary the more that you smell of it, in all honesty. There's a little bit of yeastiness to this one, and the yeastiness leans more toward that kind of Christmas puddingy, phenolic-y type end of the spectrum. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely beautiful, honestly, very rich, and a good balance between the malty side and the barrel side of things. In terms of the hoppy side of the beer, and remember, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of styles. You know, Galena and Williamette are two very popular hop varieties to use because of their red fruity characteristics. But still, you do get a little touch of green component out of this one. There's a wee bit of earthiness, a wee bit of herbal and woody character, of course. But yeah, little touch of floral note, little bit of grassiness, but the fruity side of things is very interesting in this one. So for me, the fruity side of the beer, I don't know if I'd say raisins, to be honest, because it's not quite sharp enough to be raisins, but lots of juicy plum, there's prunes, there's dates, there's figs, sultanas in there, black currants and blackberries. The aroma of this beer, like I said, is just ridiculously thick and good. But yeah, I could sit and smell this all day. So if you do try this one, take a little bit of time to just appreciate that before you taste it. but I think it is about time for us to try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Deisidaimonia, 12.1% rum and barley and bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout blend from the wonderful Seven Islands Brewery, Greek, nomadic, gypsy, whatever you want to call them, brewery. And yeah, they do some good stuff, so I'm curious about this. Let's get stuck in and see how we go. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and as they would say in Greek, yamas. Yeah, that is really, really damn good actually. Yeah, like I said to you earlier, the last Imperial Stout that I had from these guys was one of their pastry stouts, and you know, pastry stouts can be a bit of a hit or a miss for me, but I did enjoy it. But trying something like this, which is a little bit more old school, I just enjoy this so much more. This is a lovely, lovely beer, and obviously this one's brewed at Sori in Estonia as well, who really know what they're doing. But yeah, this is really, really damn good. If you come across this beer, it might be a little bit pricier, but I don't think you're going to regret trying this, in all honesty, if you're a big beer nerd like me. So yeah, this gives you everything that you want. You've got that lovely smooth barrel character, the little bit of spirit, a beautifully smooth, sweet Imperial Stout, and a little bit of fruitiness, and you've also got that that nice kind of slightly dry hoppy character to it as well. Just such a well balanced beer. So big thumbs up to Seven Island Brewery for this one, and it's the standard I would expect from these guys. So yeah, let's just go through this beer and break it down and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of the palate then, let's start there. I will say, this does just get sweeter and smoother the more time that you spend this one. Oh, let me just get that. Sorry about the edit there, guys. Got a bit of an alert on my phone and it just overrode everything. Not sure why. But yeah, we were just about to start talking about the flavour of this beer. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you can taste that lovely, smooth, oaky character in there. And like I said earlier, it's a mix of European oak and American oak, I'm guessing, because you know, as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, you have that more smooth and sweet oaky character further forward, and the more dry oaky character further back. But you've got that little bit of yeah, you've got that little bit of smooth kind of vanilla type character in there, and then yeah, the kind of drier oaky character further back. So a mix of the European and American oaks in there. But above that, you're getting the spirit layer, and it's kind of interesting because there's a really quite unique sweetness coming out of this one because of the yeah, because of the rum and the bourbon coming out of the beer. So yeah. So I think the rum is coming out a little bit further forward, so maybe the front half of that middle third of your palate, you're getting more of the kind of rum notes in there and a little bit more of a vanilla. But then further back, you're getting the bourbon coming out of this one, which has a wee bit more bite to it and almost a very slight sultana, slightly figgy kind of note. So yeah, the bourbon notes are giving you a wee bit of fruitiness further back on the palate. So yeah, let's see, the dry woodiness underneath, a little bit of vanilla in there, then you've got the spirit layer, and above that you actually start getting the malty side of the beer. So for me, the malty side of this beer is quite interesting because Further into the aftertaste, you do get a little bit more of that kind of roasty, toasty character that you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So above the spirit layer, there's a wee touch of that roasty, toasty, well-fired, malty character, but it's not overly aggressive, in all honesty, but it is there. Then you've got the more kind of rye bready type character coming out of it. Then there's a more wholemeal brown bready sort of thing in there, and then you start to get the kind of cakey and chocolate brownie type notes coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, above the wholemeal brown bready character in this one, you start to get a more kind of cakey chocolate brownie type note out of the beer. So yeah, I think there's a bit of chocolate brownie in there, like that oily sweet chocolate brownie, and then it's more of a mix of like treacly molasses and chocolatey sponge cake above that. Within those two layers, you do start to get a little bit of like nutty character coming out of the beer, and then above that you have the kind of straight up chocolate. And as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So on the chocolatey layer above the kind of chocolate sponge, you've got maybe a 70–80% cocoa chocolate further back, and then moving further forward you have more of a you have more of a kind of 50% cocoa chocolate in there. It's not more milky chocolate. The whole chocolatey side of this beer is leaning toward dark chocolate, of course, but then above the chocolatey notes you have like a toasty, you've got like a toasty brown sugary character in there, and then you've got a big circle in the middle of your palate which is more kind of like leathery brown sugars. And as I said earlier, leathery brown sugars are usually a product of the beer being subject to a longer wort boil. But yeah, you do have a nice leathery brown sugary character in there, and in the dead centre of your palate it's a little bit more along the lines of like a kind of treacle molasses sort of thing in this one. But you do get a bit of sweeter caramel as you move further out from that, and a little bit of biscuity character, particularly into the aftertaste. So yeah, that middle third of your palate is where the vast majority of your complexity goes together. So really, really interesting beer in that particular regard. That's where the majority of everything is going on. So yeah, I can feel the booze going to my head in this one actually, which is interesting. But yeah, quite a boozy beer this one, but that's what you want from an Imperial Stout. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate and the middle third of your palate are going to have very similar flavours, but they just come out at different intensities. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of bready build up in there. You can feel the rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread on top of that, and then a mix of the chocolate brownie and sort of chocolatey, caramelly, spongy cake characters. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the woody character in there, which was a little bit kind of drier, leaning more toward that European oaky note. Then yeah, on the back third of your palate, it's more of the kind of drier, bitier bourbon notes that are coming out. Then yeah, the rye bready there is a little bit lighter, taller, airier and more dry. The wholemeal brown bready character above that is kind of the same. And then yeah, you've got the chocolate brownie note, which is kind of dense and drier, but then the chocolate spongy character, which again is lighter, taller, more airy. And then above that, you have a little bit more of you can feel the sort of chocolate, the drier aspects of the chocolate, that higher percentage cocoa just creeping over the top of that, and maybe some of the more leathery brown sugars as well. But above everything else on that back third of your palate, you've got a really nice yeasty kind of character in there. So let's look at the yeasty side of this beer then. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer is, I would say, in the centre of it, you've got like a really sweet, dense, oily kind of British Christmas pudding type character coming out of the beer. So that's really quite interesting and quite quirky with this one. So yeah, big oily sweet Christmas, British English Christmas puddingy type note in there, quite phenolic, almost like brandy soaked, sherry soaked British Christmas pudding cake. Around the edge of that though, you start to get a bit more of a rye bready character, and then around that you start to get a little bit more of like a kind of bread crusty note and a kind of toasty brown sugar. So definitely the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is really, really quite nice. Yeah, obviously quite a bit of oaty character in this one as well. I think there's a lot of the smoothness and the kind of silkiness you get out of this beer must be down to the oats. So yeah, I like that with this one. On the hoppy side of things then, so for me, as I've often said with on the channel, when it comes to Imperial Stouts, not the most hop forward style of beer, and again when it's a barrel aged Imperial Stout you're going to lose a little bit of the hoppy character, and the longer the beer sits in the bottle that's going to become even more pronounced. But irregardless, you do get a little bit of hoppy character out of this one. So in the back corners of the palate you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward it's a little touch herbal, and as you push further forward it's that earthy herbal sort of thing remains prominent until you reach the front corners of the palate. You do get a little touch of floral character there and round the front curve of the tongue. I don't know why it keeps doing that. This one gets a little bit more, as I say, it gets a little bit more kind of grassy and things. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice in this one. The hoppy character just adds a little bit more complexity to the beer. But let's round off the tasting section with a look at that front third of the palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread, the sort of chocolate brownie type note, and then the kind of chocolate sponge and a wee bit of drier character in there. But the base of that front third of your palate, you're starting to get the more really smooth European oak, or the more smoother aspects of both the European and American oak in there. The sweeter side of the rum, I think there's more rum on the front third of your palate. Then yeah, you've got bit of bread crust, sweeter rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, then a mix of chocolate brownie and chocolates, more caramelly sponge cake above that. But then yeah, you have this really smooth, yeah, you've got this really smooth mix of like brown sugar and chocolate and things above that. Then it's all to do with the oily fruity notes. So let's have a little look at that fruity side of things just to round off the tasting section of the video. So yeah, fruity side of this beer for me, it's kind of what you'd expect in all honesty. When you first take it in, it's got a little bit more juiciness and a little bit more kind of sharpness to it and things. But yeah, I would say that when you take the beer in, there's maybe a very slight hint of raisin. I'm, very torn on whether to say raisin because it's not that sharp. It's more, to be honest, it's probably more oily and plummy. If you go to the back of that front third of your palate, of course, and that nice oily bubble there, it's more juicy and plummy. There's a lot of prune underneath. You've got dates, sultanas, and more of a kind of figgy character as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But yeah, as you move into the kind of front half of, that front third of your tongue, it's more to do like this, more kind of black curranty underneath, and you've got a little bit of that kind of sweeter blackberry sitting on top of it. Yeah, I would stick with that kind of analysis of the fruits. In all honesty, I think that's pretty reflective of what's going on in the beer. But yeah, all in all, very, very enjoyable Imperial Stout, this one. Very, very smooth. I don't know if creamy is the right word, but it's got a lovely Just a lovely blend of flavours going on. So something a little bit more old school, I guess you could say, from Seven Island Brewery, and they've done it very, very well. So yeah, if you're into those kind of things, you will definitely enjoy this one. But I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section of this video. Let's just round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is definitely full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. Like I said, I don't know if I'd describe this beer as being creamy in honesty, but you can really feel the smoothness of this beer is due to a mix of wheat and oat. So that's quite obvious in this one. So yeah, mid-range, full-bodied beer, this one for me. In terms of the IBU count, it's a little bit difficult to pinpoint in this one because there's a wee bit of roasty, toasty dryness in there, and you know, the sweetness that you get out of this beer is kind of lingering and dry as well. So maybe this beer is about 40-ish IBUs, but the malt base, like we said, we've got a roasty, toasty character in there underneath. You've got a smoothness in the middle, a drier sweetness on top, and then yeah, you've got that lovely oily fruity character, but slightly more dry sweetness again into the aftertaste. And let's see, just a little bit of hoppy bitterness. I think, yeah, 30 IBUs at the most would be about right for this one. But of course you can conflate bitterness and dryness and things when it comes to these beers. But all in all, really, really interesting beer, this one. And I'm glad that I got the chance to try it. So let's leave it at that. Yeah, this one was the Deisidaimonia. Always self-conscious about the pronunciations of these beers. But yeah, the Deisidaimonia from the wonderful Seven Island Brewery, Gypsy Brewery from Greece. Really, really cool, more old school Imperial Stout from these guys. And yeah, for me, this is a little bit better than their pastry stouts, but that's just personal preference. But yeah, really glad that I got to try this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Seven Island Brewery as well. Do give me some other Greek brewery recommendations and beers as well, because I would like to explore the Greek beer scene a little bit more. It's been a few years since I was there, and I know there are some very good breweries. But yeah, always cool to return to Seven Island, who for me are one of the real pioneers of the Greek craft brewing scene. But yeah, check out my social media, check out Seven Island Brewery's social media, and have a go at this beer, the Deisidaimonia 12.1% rum and bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout blend from Seven Island Brewery, a Gypsy Brewery from Greece. Till the next time, Slange, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.